Another hot one today out of the Eagles practice. We made it through. How you feeling, Rube?
I feel good. I finally have to tell people, just stop telling me it's hot. Like, we know it's hot. Everyone's coming up to, hey, it's really hot today. You know what? I know. You don't have to tell me.
It's the easiest small talk there is.
I guess.
Weather, huh?
Weather. Complain about the weather. But it was, I think the coaches like it. I think Nick likes it. Kind of see who's going to fight through it and who's maybe not. So it was brutal out there.
It was, and it was funny. I was driving in and I look at like the thermometer on my car and it says 85, and that's like 8 a.m. Like, this probably isn't going to go well.
Yeah, I mean, we walked down pretty early. What, about 10 after 9?
Mm-hmm.
And it was already baking out there. And 10 after 9, usually it's like 76, 10 after 9, Then it warms up by the end of practice. But today, it just start to finish, it was steaming.
It was a steamy day, a yellow day. So not like a super
yellow day.
Not a super, that's an impression that no one understands.
I know. My Dom sounds like my co-type.
Yeah. So kind of a medium practice, not all the way go, but still a lot of good work. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan, Reuben Frank, Dave Zangaro. So we're going to get into all the observations from the day, and we'll kind of, some of them I do want to get into a little deeper because I think there's some deeper topics to talk about. And then we talked to a bunch of players and coaches after practice, so we'll talk about that as well. Let's just start with kind of the housekeeping items to get to. On the injury front, Cam Jurgens was back at practice. They listed him as an illness. I figured the heat got to him yesterday, and I think that's what it was, at least part of it. So he's back out there. He was listed as limited, but he looked like full go to me. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. From what I could tell.
Yeah. The one bit
I
of it.
know you're waiting for me to.
Well, I'm so used to you jumping in, and then the one time I want you to, you don't do it.
Sorry.
CJ Gardner-Johnson not back at practice. He has a shoulder injury. It sounds like it's nothing major that's going to be like a long-term concern, but he might miss a little bit of time here.
Yeah, he was back there with Sydney. Now you got two safeties back there taking mental reps together, which isn't the worst thing. He's not going to. I mean, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? The weather's supposed to be really bad. He's not going to practice tomorrow. He's not going to play Friday, and I would assume he'd be back after that.
That'd be good news. I watched him on a side field a little bit. Just got a little running in and then kind of stretching out the shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, the concern is that he's just got a track record of being hurt a lot.
Yeah, we have. I mean, he's played 2 years of safety, and he's been hurt both years.
Yeah,
to different degrees and kind of fluky things, like stuff that you can't really say
Sure.
He's injury prone, but he's not the biggest guy in the world, plays really physically.
It's that Anthony Tony quote, number 25. You don't remember him. He was a fullback, drafted in the second round in 1986 out of Texas A&M. He said he was always hurt. He said, I'm not injury prone. I just hurt a lot.
That's good.
But yeah, CJ's, it's not a serious thing. He'll be back soon, but when the injuries pile up, you get concerned.
A little bit, yeah. But I think overall pretty good news that he's not going to miss a lot of time. In terms of the right guards, they had Tyler Steen listed as limited, but he did teamwork today. Mekhi Becton off the injury report. Let's get into that. I should mention John Ross left early today. Probably shouldn't speculate. It looked like a heat-related thing. He had like a towel around his neck.
Yeah.
So, but right guard. Both guys took team reps today. Mekhi Becton clearly first.
Yeah, I was a little surprised at that. I mean, Tyler Steen got hurt in the third practice.
Mm-hmm.
That's Saturday, right? And it was early in the third practice. I mean, he had two practices, and Becton comes in and takes reps at right guard, and now he's already ahead of Tyler Steen, which tells me they were looking to make a move there anyway. I mean, 2 days isn't going to. It's hard to imagine 2 days is enough to make a decision, but apparently it is. So,
do you think it's more about Steen or about Becton?
I think it's probably a little of both. I think if Steen was playing well, they would have kept him out there. He's the guy who's under contract. He's the guy who they drafted in the third round. He's a guy who's, as little reps, as little playing time at guard as he's had more than Becton.
True.
So I'm a little surprised. I thought, if anything, they might alternate, and I guess they still could.
They could, yeah. And Steen being listed as limited, even though he didn't look limited to us, that might be their out right there.
Could be. And we'll see. We'll see what happens next.
And you might hear that Steen got first team reps, but let me kind of explain what happened today. It was like a really long drive for the first team offense, and ended up like rotating the line and the receivers. Jalen stayed out there. So he got, I guess you can call them first team reps, but he was clearly behind Becton today.
Yeah, that's fair. And I'm surprised, but at this point, for him to come back and be demoted immediately after 2.5 days of practice, I think that tells you, unless they're using the limited part as a reason, I think it tells you that Becton's he's the guy right now.
Yeah, I think it's at least his to lose.
And I thought it was Steen's to lose. I guess he lost it.
Potentially, yeah. And it will be a shame for him if all that happens is he suffers a minor ankle sprain and then he ends up losing his starting job. I mean, that would be a shame for him, but it did kind of feel like the Eagles were eager to get Becton in there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe that's unfair, but they already play him at left guard early in camp when Dickerson was out. And then the first chance they got, I mean, Darian Kennard got those. Like, that's what they do. If a guy gets hurt, they're not going to completely alter the teams. They'll just bump up whoever's in that position with the second team. But
for the rest of that day.
We'll get to that with the safety position in a minute. But that was clearly the case with Darian Kennard. He hasn't gotten them since then. So the first chance they had at a full day, I think they really wanted to see Mekhi Becton, and they must like what they've seen a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know when the next time we'll see him line up is, just because of the weather, but wouldn't be surprised if he's getting the first team reps there too.
Weather, huh?
Yeah.
Weather.
Weather, yeah. Ooh, weather. Ooh, cold one.
I make fun of that, but I do that quite a bit. It's a good icebreaker.
Really?
Yeah, just get into a conversation, talk about the weather, then you move on. Another topic.
Why don't you just start with that second topic?
What if the second topic is like about football, and you're like, I don't want to talk about football right now. Let's get into it. A little small talk first.
I'm more of a get to the point kind of guy.
Okay.
Than you. I don't beat around the bush like you do.
I have a little bedside manner. That's all. We mentioned it yesterday that James Bradbury got bumped up to the first team after C.J. Gardner-Johnson went down. He ended up getting some first team reps today, but that wasn't what they started out with. They started out with Reed Blankenship and Avonte Maddox, which I think is more likely. I think that's more realistic for the season. If one of the starters gets hurt, Avonte Maddox has the playing experience. I think there's a better chance he's going to be on the team than James Bradbury.
Neither one of them's ever played safety. I mean,
well, Maddox has.
He's played a little bit, not much.
But he's gotten, a lot more than Bradbury. He's played in the game as safety.
Yeah, he has.
And I've always liked the idea of
You've talked about it forever.
I feel like that's the position I like him best. And I know he's undersized, and you worry about that. But if he's like a third safety or like a backup safety, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think either of them is an ideal long-term starter.
Yeah, I don't. That's not what we're talking about, though, right?
No, but you never know. I mean, CJ missed 14 games last year. So I'm fascinated by the Bradbury thing because he hasn't played bad. He's gotten first team reps. He's still here. They don't have a lot of depth at the position. He's handled it well. He's been a pro. I still think it's unlikely, but it's kind of a intriguing situation.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think you hit it with he looks fine. He looks like relatively natural at safety. And we talked about this before, but a lot of his skills at corner were like off ball, driving on the football. He can do that from the post, right? So we've seen that plenty with him so far this summer.
Yeah, and it's a position that his declining speed is not as much of an issue.
Mm-hmm. It was funny you mentioned that we saw C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Sidney Brown back there. At one point, Cooper DeJean walked over, and you're like, "Oh man, yeah, he's here too." Like they have a lot of talent on the bench right now, waiting to get healthy.
Yeah, in the secondary.
And with Cooper, I know that we were all planning for him to play nickel, maybe outside corner. Any thought to him playing safety? It's a position where they clearly need more help right now. Maybe it's a shame for him that he's missing this time because maybe they already have him there. But that might be the clearest path for him to get playing time as a rookie.
Yeah. I wonder how, and there is overlap between safety and slot. But I just wonder, I mean, that you're talking about a third position for a rookie. It's a lot to throw out a guy.
Yeah.
Vic does that. I mean, he likes to, and they think he's a smart guy who can handle it. We'll see. We don't know how long he's going to be out, but I wouldn't be surprised if they give him a little run there.
Or at least, like, I think they're going to find a way to get him on the field. So if it's like Quignon as the nickel, then maybe Cooper DeJean is on the field in the dime package. Maybe, if they have to have an Avant, like they have like pieces they can move around. I think they're going to find a way to get him at least some snaps in his rookie season.
Yeah, too much talent in the secondary. Who would have thought?
And young talent, which is really fun.
Who would have thought 6 months ago we'd be talking about that?
And then we haven't even really talked about Sidney Brown very much, but because we don't know when he'll come back, but he's going to be back at some point. And I saw some really good signs from him as a rookie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think there's something there.
A lot to like about him.
Mm-hmm. And another guy who can kind of play some multiple spots.
Mm-hmm. And Vic likes those guys that are versatile and multiple.
Mm-hmm. I don't have a lot of other depth chart stuff. Same linebackers still pretty much running there. Wide receiver 3 we saw more Johnny Wilson, saw some John Ross, saw some Britton Covey.
Johnny Wilson makes a play every day.
Mm-hmm. I mean, didn't really. The Eagles didn't throw the ball a ton in this practice.
He had a really nice catch in one-on-ones down the right sideline.
Oh, okay. Did he? So I missed one-on-ones. Anything else that I should know? I was watching the running backs and linebackers pass protection drill.
No, that was the highlight. Was another deep ball from Pickett, and it was perfect timing. It was a great throw.
Who was in coverage? You don't know. I'm sorry.
Ask me that. I don't remember.
Okay, no worries.
But he's impressive. His body control is really stands out.
Yeah, and he's got more body to control. There's something to that. It's like some guys we've talked about, like you lose like control over your long limbs sometimes.
Sure.
He doesn't.
Yeah, the tall, gangly. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
He's working his way into that rotation. It's really interesting. I never would have dreamed that would have happened. By the way, somebody posted, I was just glancing through the comments on our YouTube version of this podcast yesterday, and someone claimed that we said he had no chance to make the roster. We never said, neither of us ever said that, did we?
No, we never said he had no chance.
We wouldn't. Why would we say that?
I think before we saw them on the field, I didn't have him on my 53.
Okay.
And my reasoning for that was he didn't have a ton of production in college, high-level production. I really liked the Anais Smith pick at the time, and I thought he had a better chance of contributing early. And I thought he would contribute on special teams, whereas like Johnny Wilson hasn't been a special teams guy, and I thought it'd be tough to keep a receiver that far down the roster who didn't contribute on special teams. But he's not that far down the roster anymore. I mean, now he's in play to be a fringe starter on this team.
Yeah.
But I should say, like, as much as we're talking about Johnny Wilson and as much as we've been impressed, I think as much of Johnny Wilson being potentially the wide receiver 3 is about the depth of the position as it is him. Like if Paris Campbell came out here and was healthy and looked good, like I don't think they would have moved him from that spot. If they had another veteran who would, like if Olamide Zaccheaus was still here, I don't think Johnny Wilson is getting all these reps. Olamide of last year before we saw him play. Like that, I'm saying like that level veteran.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. Almost like he's got it by default, but he's the guy that's making plays.
Oh yeah, I don't want to take anything away from him, but like I think that part of the reason he's getting all these opportunities is because of what's in front of him or not in front of him.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. Like if they had
like all the credit to him, he's making the plays.
If they had a Jason Avant on the roster, this wouldn't be happening.
Yeah, like that level player.
Quez of 2021.
Or like going into 22, right? Like that level player.
Johnny Wilson, just if you don't know much about him, spent 2 years at Arizona State, barely did anything, had no production. I think he caught like 15 balls in 2 years. Goes to Florida State, and in 22 had 43 for 897. So he averaged over 20 yards, almost 21 yards a catch Not surprising with his tools, 5 touchdowns. And then he dropped to 41 for 617 last year, 15, which is still high, 15 yards a catch, but only 41 catches. They didn't have only had a super high-powered passing game, Florida State. But so, yeah, the numbers aren't off the charts with him. Had under 2,000 yards in 4 years. So
opinions were really split on him too.
Yeah.
In terms of evaluators, and that showed. He went in the 6th round.
Yeah.
I think it's tough sometimes with a guy of his size. You don't have a great frame of reference for other players to like comp him to.
Yeah. He's playing like a 4th round pick. Like a mid-round pick, not a 6th round pick.
I agree with that. Practice ended with just the 3rd interception of the summer. This was a little caveat that it's kind of a gotta have it moment. They're in a situational drill. The situation was, I have it in front of me here, plus 25, 46 seconds on the clock. Offense is down 8, no timeouts. So it's like, you got to have it. And this was not the first play. So the clock is running and Tanner McKee forced it in there. But your guy, Sean Stevens, made another play on the ball, broke up the pass, and then Andre Sam picked it off and went the other way. 2 guys who aren't going to make the team, but they can help themselves. They can get some playing time in the preseason. They can end up on a practice squad, and after that, you never know what happens.
Andre with an apostrophe.
Mm-hmm. The Eagles don't have his apostrophe on the rosters they give us.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's a typo. Yeah, Sean Stevens, 2 days in a row, he's made a play. There's nowhere to put him on the 53, but he's an intriguing guy who I'd be surprised if he's not in the practice squad.
And then Andre Sam, we haven't talked about. He's looked okay for a position where they don't have a ton of depth. He's made some plays here and there. It was really cool right before the pick. I don't know if you noticed this, but Anthony Harris, who's kind of with the Eagles as an intern this summer,
coaching intern,
really giving him some coaching tips, and then Andre pays it off right away.
Yeah,
it was fun. I was watching a drill earlier in practice with the safeties, and you had Anthony Harris coaching them up. You had Brent Selleck running routes. This is pretty cool for these guys.
Anthony Harris, they think highly of him. The organization likes him. He's never really got to know him too well when he was here. He was always a nice guy, but
the one thing that will always stand out to me was not on the field. It was the day he got cut. He had a charity event.
That's right.
At I think it was at a Dick's Sporting
Goods store. Yeah,
and he still showed up and did it.
Yeah,
I mean, and he talked about like, hey, like there are ups and downs in life. Like I want to be here for the kid. Like I was so impressed by that.
Yeah, quality person.
Yeah. So that was the pick of the day. Just 3 so far. We've had one in back-to-back days now.
How many does Jalen have?
Jalen has 0. He still looks sharp, and look, it has been impressive that he hasn't thrown one yet. He's only gotten close a couple of times.
And you made a good point in your obs that it's not like he's being risk averse.
Mm-mm.
I mean, he's being aggressive. He's running the offense.
Probably a few more checkdowns than we've seen in the past. But you have a Saquon Barkley out there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, but for the most part, I mean, he's running the offense. He's throwing it where the ball should be going. And he's just been really accurate, not making mistakes. And that's huge. I mean, what do you have, 15 last year to 17? 15, right? That's way too many.
But you know what? The interesting thing about that is, yes, it's a lot. No question they need to cut down. Pro Football Focus has a really cool stat, the turnover-worthy plays. And his number was way lower there. Like his number was more in line with what he was the previous few years.
So the year before.
Yeah. So it wasn't quite as low, but he was still really good in that stat league wide. And there is kind of a finicky nature to interceptions. A lot of times,
sure,
like it's going to come out in the wash. And last year they got some,
like if it's off Dallas Goedert's foot.
Yeah, there's some luck involved. And I know coaches hate that. I know coaches hate to say that there's luck involved in turnovers, but there absolutely is. Yeah. Some of it's out of your control. And I think there's going to be some natural regression to the mean with interceptions this year.
It's interesting. I mean, I'm not a big stat guy, so I don't really know what to make of that.
Well, that's like a raw old school stat versus
yeah. No, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to take a look at that. I do think that he was a little careless with the ball sometimes. I think
at times,
especially late in the year. And I think some of that was just desperation. It was like frustration, desperation, just getting away from running the offense. It was just uncharacteristic. I think he's more of a 6 interception guy than a 15 interception guy.
Yeah, even if you cut it down to like 10, 11, 12, I think you're in good shape.
Yeah. 12 is a little high, but yeah, somewhere around 10 is where you want to be. And I think that's where he'll be. With this offense, I think he has a chance to have one hell of a season.
Yeah, and if Jalen can't do it, I got Braden Mann coming in. You see this throw from Braden Mann today?
Yeah.
The punter, he was working as the holder, obviously, in the field goal unit.
We're just saying what a great athlete he is.
Yeah, they practiced a fake, and he sold it too. Might have an acting future because it's like he has to play it off like it's a bad snap and he's panicking, but he rolls out and he hit an eligible Brett Toth. You know what's funny? When in my notes,
Brett Toth does it all.
In my notes, I only write numbers, just shorthand to save time, and then I transfer. And as I was transferring, I almost wrote Matt Tobin. Like, what a weird name to pop in my
Tobin
head.
hasn't been here in a few years.
In 2024, to see 64 and go, that's Matt Tobin.
Well, I think they came in together. Toth,
Not quite.
Their names both start with T-O. It just occurred. I'll just go backspacing here. Nick Foles, how many interceptions did he have in his career in the postseason as an Eagle? 3. One was in Chicago down the left sideline. It was just a bad throw, but 2 are off Alshon's hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the one in the Super Bowl is one of his best throws of the game, and there was a lot of them down to the 2-yard line. And
even the interception in practice yesterday was off of Will Shipley.
Yeah, right. It wasn't a bad throw. Anyway, but that's a good analytic. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile. I think it is really telling too. Aside from that, they worked on like the backup specialists. I always like to see who those are. So Braden Mann is the backup kicker. Grant Calcaterra is the backup long snapper, and Britton Covey is the backup holder.
That's a drill made for you. I mean, it's like, this is so up Dave's alley here. Braden Mann kicking, Covey's holding, and Grant Calcaterra's long snapping.
I like to know all that stuff.
I know you do.
The Eagles now these days like hold the emergency QB close to the vest, but it's not even like now you do have an emergency QB with the new rules, so you don't even like know who it would be if it's a non-quarterback.
Right.
My favorite moment of all time covering this team was when John Dornbus got hurt and Michael Kendricks took it upon himself to start trying the long snap on the sideline.
Nobody asked him.
Nobody asked him to. Brent Selleck was the emergency long snapper. He's getting ready. But that was at a point in Kendrick's career where he was kind of frustrated. He wasn't playing very much. And he just figured, I wonder if I can do this. So it looked like they were panicking and having tryouts on the sideline, but it was just 95 decided to try a little something.
That's your favorite moment covering the team?
Maybe. It was very funny to me.
You covered a Super Bowl championship.
Yeah, but
you got to hold the trophy in a locker room.
I didn't hold it.
Who tried to hand it to you?
I think it was Corey Clement.
Okay. Anyway.
Moro Ojimo had a good day.
He's having a nice camp.
Nice camp. Ever since the pads came on, like he's starting to cook a little bit. He got a sack today, had a tackle for loss. Just really disruptive. I don't know how they're going to use him. He's undersized. He's under 300 pounds. So I think he's a little limited with that. But he shows flashes. And I've been really impressed by him this summer so far.
Yeah.
I actually thought he got off to a slower start in camp. But he's starting to pick it up.
Yeah, very much. He's been good. He'll make the team. He's on the roster. I think Vic will find a way to use him.
Yeah. Another big defensive tackle rep from Thomas Booker. He rolled over Nick Gates. Nick Gates was like looking up at the sky after this rep.
Really? That's wrestling talk right there.
There were some good like depth,
looking up at the lights.
Depth lineman play today. You had that Ojimo play. You had Thomas Booker. Teron Jackson had one where he threw Aneem Dankwa into I think it was Tanner McKee. Yeah. I like that. Some depth there, some good competition. Maybe doesn't say a lot about the depth offensive line, but
Yeah, that's fair.
So while you were watching the receivers and DBs go through their one-on-ones, it's a really tough time to figure out what you're going to watch because you have DB receiver one-on-ones. Sometimes the other field is tight ends versus safeties. So normally it's like receivers corners. Then they have like safeties versus tight ends. Then on the far field, I looked over it. I don't think they were doing one-on-ones, offensive line, defensive line. I think it was like 2-on-2s. They were running stunts. So I'd been wanting to watch the running backs and the linebackers go at it. And it was right in front of me. So I stayed there and watched it. Saquon's different. Yeah. You'd expect him to be a guy with 2 tree trunks as legs, but I mean, it's like, it's weird to say it. It's fun to watch him pass protect.
Yeah, and we haven't really talked about that aspect of his game.
Like clearly the best I've seen in a long time.
I think Gainwell's gotten a lot better. His efforts there, he's just not really built for it.
Mm-hmm.
But Barkley's a natural, and he seems to really enjoy doing it.
He's good at it.
Yeah.
Eventually, there was one rep where maybe Devin White, you could give him a win, but it was like a second effort. Saquon's just, he's strong, man.
Yes.
He's strong, and he anchors like an offensive lineman.
He does.
It's very funny. I was chatting with Fran Duffy about it. I was like, it's got to be so weird for some of these guys, like the linebackers. They go up against like Will Shipley on a rep, and then the next rep is against Saquon. And they're like, you gotta be kidding me. No chance to get around him.
Yeah. It's been impressive watching him.
Yeah, speaking of Shipley, not great. He's got to get better here. Yeah. This could keep him off the field.
Yeah.
As a rookie, need to be able to pass protect, and he's willing. It's just he's not able yet, and he needs to get that part of it.
Yeah, work in progress.
And then I gave a little shout out to Lou Nichols. Of the back end of the roster running backs, I'm a Lou Nichols guy.
I like Lou Nichols.
He's to me, he's separated from Tyrion Davis-Price and Kendall Milton.
Yeah.
I see more burst. I thought he was better in these pass protection drills. I think his hands have looked way smoother.
He can catch the ball.
Yeah, for a guy who's 5'10", 220, you wouldn't expect that.
Right.
I like Lou Nichols.
Yeah.
I'm a Lou Nichols guy.
Yeah, me too. We're kind of
No.
Oh, you had him first.
Yeah, I'm a Lou Nichols guy.
Okay.
You can take Kendall Milton.
No, I don't want him.
Okay.
It's Lou, L-E-W, for those of you scoring at home. Central Michigan, I believe.
Yeah, he's been around a little bit.
Had a huge year. Led the MAC. He had like 2,000 rushing yards.
Central Michigan. He's a first-year player.
Yeah,
from Detroit.
But he had 40 catches. He had 40 catches and 1,848 rushing yards in 21. Averaged 5.4 yards a carry, 16 touchdowns. He had a heck of a year. Saquon was talking. Were you in the Saquon availability the other day?
Yeah.
He was talking about how he asked Lou Nichols, like, what'd you do in college? And he's like, yeah. He's like, wow, you had a pretty good career. But then he was hurt the next year. But he's an interesting guy. I mean, was he 5'10", 220?
Yeah.
You can put him, I'll put him on my practice squad.
Yeah, I like Lou Nichols.
He was drafted. Packers drafted him 7th round in 23 last year.
I don't have a ton of other notes. A lot of running the ball today, a lot of QB runs. I thought coverage in general held up. Today there were some plays where Jalen kind of looking downfield, there's nothing there, he takes off. So in general, I thought the defense had a pretty good day, but it was also designed to be that way a little bit.
Yeah.
Stupid observation of the day. Nick Sirianni has his bullhorn. He's calling for his daughter, Taylor. He's trying to get her attention. She's in the back of the end zone. She must have been eating water ice or looking up at the sky or whatever. So he's trying a few times. And he's walking by CJ Gardner-Johnson. And CJ goes, give me that thing. And Nick hands it over. And there was a moment where I'm going, this could go any way.
You just never know.
You never know. Luckily, CJ just then called his daughter's name again and tried to get her attention. But there was a split second where I was like, I don't know if that was a good move, Nick. You might not get that back.
Yeah. Nick, he was trying to watch practice, and he was calling his daughter over, and he was looking back at the play. It was right at the very end of practice.
It was at the end, yeah.
So, yeah. Anything
else at practice today that you wanted to hit?
No, I thought it was kind of a grind. It was so hot out there. I don't think it was a bad practice, but there wasn't a lot of flashy stuff.
Also noticed the music wasn't playing all practice.
Yeah.
I think that was because they were trying to hit these situations and you have to be able to hear. But it does kind of change. Honestly, it changes the vibe of a practice when there's not music.
It's so much nicer.
Well, for you.
Yeah, for me.
I mean, the players like it. They're the main
Did you
people
hear that
practice.
Hannah Montana song the other day? It wasn't a song by Hannah Montana. It was a hip hop song called
Oh,
Hannah
yeah,
Montana.
I know that song.
That might have been the worst song I've ever heard in my life.
So it's funny. The last 2 days before today, I think Lane has infiltrated the aux because 2 days ago it was Creed open practice, and then yesterday was I think it was Kenny Chesney. So I think Lane is slowly creeping his way into the music.
We need Malcolm back to get some Dead going.
I forgot Malcolm
that
played
one
some
day?
Dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's funny though? There'll be a day of practice where I'm like, I like the music today, and I realize, oh no, the players probably don't. Even if it's like older rap or something, I'm like, playing like an old Kanye song. I'm like, oh, okay, this is my era. And then I'm like, oh, the players are like, I don't even know what this is.
They probably do. I mean,
maybe
we know Queen and Pink Floyd in Boston.
Well, don't say we. Don't lump me in with you.
Well, oh, so you don't? You never heard More Than a Feeling?
I do. I just didn't want to be lumped in there.
I met Boston.
Scott? Yeah, he's a nice guy. He plays
Boston
for the Rams now.
No, I met him, but I was working at a record store in White Plains, New York called Record World, and we had our manager got tickets for Boston at Nassau Coliseum, like when they were at their peak, like the first album had just come out, More Than a Feeling and all that. And so we're sitting up there, and a guy from Epic Records was sitting next to us. We started talking to him, and he's like, "Hey, you want to come down and meet the band after the show?" So we did. So we went down, and they all came out except the singer, Tom Schultz, didn't come out, but they were the nicest guys. And they were young. I mean, they weren't much older than we were. I mean, I was probably like 19. And they were great. They were so nice. And we went back the next day and did it again. Saw Boston 2 nights in a row. They were an incredible lot back then.
That's cool.
Yeah.
There's a concert at the Link tonight. We're recording this on Tuesdays. You got Tuesday, Wednesday, sold out shows at the Link. I hope the weather holds up for these people coming. There are people tailgating right now. We're recording this at 2:19 as we record this. A little worried about these people outside in the heat all day.
Yeah, it can be brutal. Ashley Hall, our colleague Ashley Hall's going.
Okay.
To one of them.
You know what's funny? I was gonna buy tickets when they came out, and now that I'm going through training camp, I'm kind of happy I'm not going.
Yeah,
because I don't want to be outside anymore.
Yeah, I hear you. I like his and Turnpike Troubadours are playing too.
I like them a lot.
They're really good.
They're opening. They're one of the openings?
There's three bands, so I don't know who's first. Troubadours are second. But Zach Bryan's new record I really like. Have you heard it? Great American Bar Scene.
I've listened to it. I haven't really dug in much.
Pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're off the rails. Let's get back on the rails on the other side.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table. Before practice today, we talked to Kellen Moore. After practice, talked to a bunch of football players. We had Kenny Pickett, Tanner McKee back there. Keely Ringo got a chance to catch up with Jeremiah Washburn, the defensive end, outside linebackers coach. Let's just ping pong this back and forth a little bit. Something you heard today.
Yeah, really good chat with Kenny Pickett. I talked for quite a while about a lot of things. He said the hardest part of learning a new offense is unlearning the old offense, and he said that's been the biggest challenge for him. But he thinks he's finally kind of has one offense in his head now, where he kind of had two floating around for a while early in camp. But I was most interested.
That showed, by the way.
Yeah, it did, and he knows that. But I was really intrigued by what he said about Kellen Moore's offense and just how, and we've kind of touched on this, but just how it's designed to be so multiple and unpredictable. And that means anybody can get the ball at any time. And that's why maybe you'll see AJ more like 1,280 yards than 1,450. I don't know that. But he said, it's going to make it tougher to defend because you're not going to know where the ball's going at any time. Kellen Moore had a really interesting quote along those lines. He kind of was at the end of another quote, and he said, what did he say? We want to have, gosh, we don't have the transcript yet, do we?
No.
What did he say? We want to have,
I don't know where you're going either.
We want to have tendencies. We want tendencies so we can break them at critical moments.
Yeah.
That was a great quote.
Yeah. And it's smart because you're putting everything on tape, especially, and I know I asked him about being under center more, and I think this kind of falls in line. Like, if you're going to do things, and like, especially with like receivers, right? Like, if you have a John Ross out there, you don't want it to be 4 verts, right? Like, you don't want to do that all the time. But if you do it, you want to be able to break it and use that to your advantage. I think that's smart football.
Yeah, it reminded me of Shane Steichen, how he kind of ran the offense. Everything was about setting up something later on. He was a mad scientist that way. He was so good at it and so shrewd at it, I thought. Because it's one thing to call plays. That's the easy part. It's using those plays to set up other plays. And
yeah, it's not just a play at a time.
Yeah.
Like, there has to be, you're playing chess, not checkers, right? Like, you're thinking about your next move, not just the move in front of you.
Play calling. Yeah. And Shane was great talking. Like, we used to BS with him, and he would go on and on about like different opponents, and he knew exactly, like, if we do this, this, and this, they're going to be looking for this, and we're going to do this, we're going to get big play. And they did. Yeah. And that was, yeah. But Kellen Moore's got a little of that in him, and it was interesting talking about his offense. He was pretty forthcoming about it.
About some stuff.
But the thing is, like, we're so used to them being completely not forthcoming that when you get a little dribs and drabs, it's like, wow, something to sink our teeth into. I think you're going to like this offense. I think it's going to be high tempo. It's going to be versatile. It's going to be unpredictable. Yeah. Let
me give you something on the defensive side.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Washburn was asked a very simple question. Like, he's known Vic Fangio for a long time, and it's basically asked, what has allowed Vic to be so successful for so long? And the crux of his answer was that he's not like stuck in his ways. He's willing to adapt all the time, like year to year. He's willing to adapt and just do different things. And I think that's a really important point, because Vic gets all this credit for his scheme that's been copied and duplicated and ripped off over year. And like the base of that defense is always going to be there, but he is really willing to change different things. We'll see how willing he is to change some things, but you don't last as long if you're not.
Yeah.
And it's players first. So I thought that was a unique perspective from a guy in Jeremiah Washburn, who has inherently a unique perspective, being a former scout, now in the coaching world, has been here for a bunch of different DCs. He has some staying power. They must like him a lot. So I enjoyed hearing his perspective on Vic.
Yeah, it's interesting. Check that out. I like Wash. Sharp guy.
He definitely is. Yeah. You got something else there?
We talked to Tanner McKee. He served a mission in Brazil and talked about the country for quite a while. It's funny, one of the PR guys was about to end the interview, and it was so interesting that he just let him go, which, thank you. It's not always the case. But he just talked about how the country's going to really embrace NFL football, and he wishes there was more time down there. He was down there 2 years.
Yeah, I talked to him last year for a Q&A about speaking Portuguese, and he said there's actually one, I think, a massage therapist at the NovaCare, or at least there was last year, who spoke Portuguese, and that's where he would get it. He would like kind of sharpen his Portuguese skills with that massage therapist. I don't know if they're still there or not, but
yeah, he said that the Portuguese they learn their football from Madden, so they don't speak English, but they learn specific phrases. So like somebody will be talking in Portuguese, and say fade route, and then Portuguese. So they know all the terminology in English, and they don't know the rest of the language. But he's excited to go down. He said he was excited about the game before they even found out the Eagles were playing. So he's looking forward to going back down. And they have a couple things. There's not a lot of time, but I know they have some community event they're doing. And
the day before the game.
Yeah, which is weird also.
Yeah, but it's a short trip for them.
Yeah, it's the only day.
Look, it's a weird way to start off your season. Yeah. That far away.
Yeah.
But they're going to try to handle it as best as they can.
Yeah, they must have a walkthrough that Thursday too, I would think.
Mhm.
And
Day before the game.
probably walk through when they get in Wednesday. We're getting ahead of ourselves, but yeah, and he also talked about just he said it's a different offense, but just being here for a second year makes him more comfortable. He knows the players, he knows the receivers, most of them. So he said even though it's a different offense, I have that comfort level from being here a second year. He's having a good camp. He looks good. He was asked about getting second team reps, and he said, "For me, it's not really about that. I'm just trying to get better every day. I'm not thinking in terms." He said, "None of us are really thinking in terms of that." I still think he's going to be the 3 to start. It's going to be really hard for him.
They're not going to.
No, they didn't bring Kenny Pickett in to be 3. I think Tanner would have to be really, really good, and Pickett would have to be really, really bad for that to happen.
And even though Pickett's had his struggles, it's not like he's been awful.
No.
And I think he's getting better. I believe him when he says he's starting to get the offense.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Yeah, it's.
I think I mentioned this before, but to me he looked like Jalen looked in the spring.
Yeah.
It's like you can see the wheels turning a little bit. Everything's now crisp. But if he's figuring it out, that's a good sign.
Yeah, and he thinks he's getting rid of the ball faster now, which
I agree with that in general.
I think so. Yeah.
I feel like I'm saying throw the ball, Kenny, way less in these recent practices.
Yeah, Dave would get impatient with Kenny sometimes. Kenny, throw the ball. Not out loud.
I hate when there's like a non-mobile. He's actually more athletic than I thought.
He can move around a little bit.
I hate when there's like a non-athletic quarterback and they like take off and they get a first down in a practice. And you're like, there's no chance he does that in the real game.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was good conversations with those guys. I think they were the only ones. Huff came in the tent.
I asked Vic Fangio about him the other day because Vic's comments on Huff,
raised some eyebrows
earlier in camp did raise some eyebrows that like he's not there yet in terms of being a 3-down player. Vic said he's coming along. Like we're liking what we're seeing. And it was funny because the first time Vic said that, Huff was like, "What? I think I can do it."
Yeah, that first quote got a lot of run in New York papers. They loved that, but they didn't have the second part of the same quote, which is like, we think he can do it. We think he's gonna be really good at it.
Time will tell, and that's something I think is gonna be tough to tell until they actually play games.
I would think so. Did you get into Keely?
Yeah, I was there for Keely Ringo a little bit. It was funny because I asked him just like on a human level, because I know how I would be if I'm in a competition with one other person for a starting job. I'm paying attention to where I'm getting the reps, and I'm watching, I'm counting, I'm doing all that. Keely's like, I get that. I'm not doing that. And I kind of believe him because I think he's better equipped to handle a position battle than I would be. But I think it's like it does kind of, you have to fight your nature a little bit.
Yeah.
I think everyone will kind of want to know like where they stack up, but he's trying to just control what he can, and I think he's played well.
Yeah,
he said he's like him and Isaiah Rodgers are like very different players, so they're each trying to like take something from the other's game, and you can obviously see what it is. Like Keely is a bigger, stronger, like heavier corner, whereas Isaiah kind of has the finesse game down.
Yeah, I think that's fair. They're really close. It's interesting. They I asked both of them about the competition, and they both said, this is last week, I think, and they both said, we on the field we're competing, but in the meeting rooms, the locker room, we're both helping each other. And
football's a weird thing like that.
Yeah,
like, you got people who are coming for your job, but in order to be a good teammate, you got to help them.
Yeah,
you might be helping them take your job.
Yeah, but coaches look at that. I mean, that's part of being a good teammate.
Yeah. Anything else from these pressers today? I
don't think so.
I did want to mention I caught up with the author of.
That was a good story. I enjoyed that.
Thank you. It was fun to write. If you missed it, I asked Saquon Barkley yesterday why he went up to Jalen Hurts during a practice and asked him if he thinks he's fearless. And he mentioned a book that he recently read called Victory Favors the Fearless. So last night I figured, let me email this author. See if he gets back to me. And sure enough, he ended up getting back to me. And it was fun. It was fun to chat with him a little bit. His name's Darren Donnelly. He has like a series of these. He called them like sports fables. They're all fictional, but the message behind them, almost like self-helpish kind of books, but not as corny in a way. It's like it's through these little stories that this story is about a boxer who learns to not be scared all the time. He fights against his fear. My favorite anecdote that the guy told me was that it was kind of based or inspired by Mike Leach.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Who, to go full circle, used to visit Eagles training camp
Sure.
at Lehigh.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? Mike Leach and Andy Reid were at BYU at the same time and didn't know each other.
Yeah, that's wild.
Because Mike played rugby.
Mm-hmm. And Mike wasn't a football guy. And that's part of his like his facing his fears is like he was an outsider in football, but he had conviction. He believed in himself. And he like the quote from Mike Leach is basically like when it comes to sizing up risk, sure, like some wrong decisions get made, but not as much as you think. What affects an outcome more than anything else is effort and attitude. So you can kind of see why that ended up being the basic thesis for a book that a guy like Saquon Barkley would enjoy.
Right. Yeah. Do you ever randomly write to an author, like not work related, but just write to an author?
I have once before. A guy named Mark Adams who writes the kind of books I read generally are like nonfiction adventure type books.
Mm-hmm.
And he's done some really cool ones. He did one called Turn Right at Machu Picchu, and he like retraced the steps of Hiram Bingham, who was the first white guy really to stumble upon Machu Picchu. So like I like those kind of books. So I emailed him once and had a back and forth just to like find out some of his favorite books in that genre.
There was a book. I used to read a lot of those like true I guess like travel adventure type.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I used to read a lot of that stuff. There was a novel I read called Jukebox Queen of Malta by a guy named Nicholas Rinaldi, and I loved it. It was one of my favorite novels. And like the whole book, you just like fall in love with this one character, and at the end, she died. I don't want to spoil it for people who might be reading it, but
I was going to get to the end of that tonight.
10 pages left, but one of the characters that you just adore dies at the end, and I was shattered, and I found out he was a professor at, I think, like North Carolina State or something. I went on the directory and got his email, and I wrote to him, and I just said,
"What the hell?"
I mean, I was like, I just want you to know, I was just crushed when, and I said, I really loved the book, but man, that was really hard. It crushed me when she died. And he wrote back and said, it crushed me too. I thought that was such a cool answer.
Yeah, that's cool.
He said, but I had to do it like for the book to be the book I wanted. He said, but it crushed me too. I thought that was such a cool thing to write.
Yeah, that's good. All right. A bunch of emails here.
Let's do it.
As a
we'll
reminder,
take book recommendations too. Music recommendations.
Do you have a book recommendation?
No, I'm saying we'll take them from.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Eagle-eye at nbcuni.com is the email address. If you're on YouTube there, you have the QR code. You can just scan that and send it from your phone. First one here from Chris. Hi, Dave and Rube. Really enjoy the podcast. It helps time fly at the gym. My question is regarding wide receiver 3. Why have the Eagles not brought in Hunter Renfrow to compete for the job? He's a proven NFL player, and it addresses a big need. Considering that Howie has taken some chances on other one-year wonders with worse resumes like Paris Campbell, what is the downside to bring in a 28-year-old former Pro Bowler?
I mean, he's only a slot. I think if they spend some money on a wide receiver 3, it would be someone who can do more than just play the slot. We've heard Kellen Moore talk about, I want all my receivers to learn every spot.
Yeah, and look, I really liked Hunter Renfrow at his prime. Great route runner. I can't believe I'm going to say this. I think it's a little redundant with Britton Covey on the roster. I think if you need a slot-only shifty inside receiver, it can be Britton.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, Renfro's one good year was in 21. I mean,
Yeah, and theoretically, like I know he hasn't performed well, but Anais Smith could one day fill that kind of role too.
Yeah.
But I did like Hunter Renfrow back in the day. Maybe he's just not the same guy anymore. He's missed time. Last year, he didn't really have a very productive season. Last year, he played in 17 games. He had 25 catches for 255 yards for the Raiders.
Yeah.
Fell out of favor.
Yeah, I just don't think he'd be an upgrade.
Next one from Scott. David and Rube, after seeing the open practice, should we be concerned with the level of the defense? I know they aren't going all out to hit their own guys, but it seemed like the offense had their way all night.
Nick was asked about that. And I mean, his point was, the stuff we're doing out there is really geared toward the offense looking good. And he said, when you're not tackling, the defense can't tackle. So there could be a big play by the offense, but it might have been a 3-yard gain if they could tackle. So I think the defense has been fine.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to remember, like, that's one practice of now 9.
Yeah.
And that was a very good day for the offense. I think there have been, like, I thought today was, I'd give the nod to the defense today.
Yeah, definitely. But I thought it was a good point. The offense can run its stuff, but the defense can't run its stuff. So that kind of makes it one-sided.
There was a cool moment today. C.J. Gardner-Johnson really praised one of Vic's play calls, which is something on my radar because the last time CJ was here, he did not praise Jonathan Gannon's play calls in that Super Bowl. So, yeah, so just something on my radar. Next question here from P from Mount Airy. Big fan of the pod in your daily recording. So it appears there's been somewhat of a shift in the Eagles' philosophy on cap allotment. Starting next season, it seems that most of their salary will be allotted to offense. The only veteran non-rookie defenders expected to be under contract next season, Huff, CJ GJ, and Reed Blankenship. Are you concerned / do you think this is a winning philosophy, spend on offense and draft defense, or do you think spending will eventually shift toward defense?
Yeah, the projected cap, the offense's cap number is so much higher than the defense.
Mm-hmm.
The first time since I actually was looking at that first time since like 18 or something. It's been higher. I don't know. I think that some of that is just quirks of contracts, but yeah, I mean, you've got to draft well to do that.
Yeah, I think part of it is by design. I think some of it is like there's probably an area where it could go either way with some players, right? Like you have a big contract on offense with Landon Dickerson because you don't want to lose him. You drafted him. Like some of it is just by design, but some of it happened. Some of it is just like,
I mean, most of the
happenstance.
most of the guys that they've signed to big deals are offensive guys because they're up and they're good players.
You can almost argue they've drafted well on offense and they got to keep the guys they drafted.
Yeah.
Like Devontae, Landon Dickerson, Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
And the quarterback is a big chunk of this.
Yeah. I mean,
you go from a quarterback on a rookie deal to a quarterback on a real deal, then it changes the math.
Yeah. And we'll see, like, there's going to be some guys coming up. I mean, like whether it's Sweat or Devin White or Zach Bond, who could get big contracts and even the scales again. We'll see.
Next one here from John LaCory.
How's that spelled? Liquori, like Marty LaCory?
Sure.
First high school runner to go under 4 minutes a mile. Essex Catholic High School, 1967.
Okay, we'll go back to just first names from now on. Gents, I love the pod. Never miss an episode. I'm from South Jersey, but now on the road full-time, living the van life and trying to catch up on Dave's National Park number. That's very cool. Here's my question. Who is your surprise pick to make the initial 53 and surprise pick to miss the initial 53?
Interesting. Good question. I would say to miss the 53. It's a little early for this. I mean, I think Johnny will. I think he wasn't on my initial 53, but I think he's going to make the 53 now. Who's in jeopardy of getting cut who I thought was going to be on the 53?
I'll give you one.
Yeah.
Paris Campbell.
It's fair.
And like you could say Oren Burks, he's really didn't practice at all. Paris Campbell practiced. He was day one, he was wide receiver 3. You're thinking he can be on the field. I don't know if he's on the team.
Yeah, and you can say the same for John Ross.
Mm-hmm. Well, even though, I mean, I think that would be less shocking.
Yeah, I kind of.
He hasn't played in the league since 2021.
Yeah, it was first round pick. No, you're right. I don't think he has, which would be more shocking. He's just John Ross is a guy I thought had a pretty good chance to make the team, but that whole third receiver thing is in such flux. But yeah, Paris Campbell's a good answer.
How about the flip side? A guy maybe under the radar who could make the team.
Well, I mentioned Johnny Wilson, who wasn't on my initial 53. I think he's one. You know, Moro Ojimo is a guy who I thought, was he a 7 last year?
Mm-hmm.
He was a guy who I thought really was on the bubble a little bit, but I think he's been pretty good. I think he'll make the team.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 under the radar for me, who I probably still don't have on the 53, but they're on my radar. Brett Toth.
Yeah.
He's actually performed pretty well. He's getting second team, sometimes first team snaps. They seem to like him. And I don't think they've been in love with Matt Hennessy and some of the other guys they brought in. So I could see Brett Toth making the roster. And then Patrick Johnson is someone to me that never gets talked about. But if he doesn't make the team, he's going to be the 54th, 55th player.
Yeah.
He's such a special teams guy. He's shown some flashes coming off the edge. I think he has a real shot to make the roster.
It's crazy. It's his 4th year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Played more special team snaps than anyone over the last 3.
7th round pick.
Indeed. All right, next question and last question from Crane. Are our expectations of Nakobe Dean being an NFL starter / standout player realistic? As we've seen, even the best college football players, including Heisman winners, don't last or succeed at the NFL level, let alone a 3rd round draft pick. I know he was a standout player in college. What percentage of 3rd round picks even make a 53-man roster, let alone play meaningful snaps and see a second contract? I know Eagles fans can be hyperbolic, so is it time to pump the brakes?
Yeah.
I'm concerned about Nakobe.
Pump away.
I'm concerned about what I
do
see.
think the percentage of 3rd round picks that make a roster is fairly high.
I think he means like really like have staying power. And
yeah.
Get big contracts and
all
of that.
Eagles have as many 3rd round picks on the team as 1st round picks.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's been a disappointing summer for Nakobe, and Zach Bond's going to be the starter. And yeah, that's disappointing because.
Yeah. And I thought he'd have a chance to win this job. I think they would probably want him to win this job.
I mean, day 1, practice 1, Zach Bond was out there and he still is. So, you know, Kobe's gotten his reps here and there, but they love Zach Bond. I mean, we talked the other day about how Nick just singled him out for his toughness. He's smart and tough. It's going to be hard for Nakobe to beat that out.
Yeah, I'm with you. And right now, I
do think he'll be on the roster.
Yeah, I think he'll play special teams. I think he'll be a backup linebacker. Maybe he still has a shot to earn a starting gig. I think that's slowly drifting away.
Yeah.
Again, if you have a question for us, eagleeye@nbcuni.com. This is the part of the pod where I remind you guys to please subscribe and rate the podcast wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, click the like button, subscribe there as well. Rube, any final words?
Do it again tomorrow.
All right, sounds good. Another practice on Wednesday. Preseason game number 1 on Friday. We can't wait. For Rube, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.